Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Scott Hunter, founder of Vedavoo. Scott shares his fly fishing journey, and we take a deep dive into all things Vedavoo. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And as we continue to create and distribute more diverse content, you may want to consider downloading our iOS or our Android app. We organize our content by category, so you can go straight to the content that interests you the most. The apps are free, and the links are in the show notes. Alternatively, just search The Articulate Fly where you get your mobile apps. Now, on to the interview. Well, Scott, welcome to The Articulate Fly.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and we have a tradition on The Articulate Fly. We always ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Well, that's a good one. That's a tough one. I've got two that stick out really early. Obviously, we can't remember back to those first times we were out. Fortunately, my dad got me started fishing when I was tiny. But I do remember sneaking out on a little farm pond in the Panhandle of Nebraska with my grandfather. And he got me catching bluegill. And one of my most amazing fishing days probably ever, and even still to this day, was that day. He was I was born on his birthday, so we had a kind of a special bond. He took me out. And we must have caught 15 or 20 little bluegill, and I insisted that he clean them all so we could take them home for dinner. And bless him, he did. So that was a special one. And then I remember doing some special stuff with my dad up trout fishing, just little panther martins or, small little worm on a hook or otherwise, a little guy fishing small streams up in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Special place and a lot of good memories up there.
Yeah, very neat. When did you come to the dark side of fly fishing?
Well, dark side, light side, it's a question of whether or not you're asking my wife, I guess, huh?
Yeah,
but,
maybe.
But long story short, I graduated from the University of Wyoming, and that was the only thing I asked for as a graduation present for my folks was a fly rod. And my dad came through, so it was right after I graduated from college. I would have loved to start sooner, especially looking back now. I mean, growing up in Casper, Wyoming, right on Gray's Reef and Miracle Mile and all the other special spots around there. But no, I missed that boat, so to speak, and but have since made up for it in many ways.
Well, there you go. And, as you mentioned, you grew up in Wyoming, but you came east for graduate school. What made you head this way and stay, of all things?
That is one of the questions I get most regularly from folks. And it's just they hear Wyoming, especially in this world, and they're just like, are you out of your mind? What were you thinking? To be fair and honest, I mean, I knew I wanted to start this business. And even as early as when I was a senior in undergrad, and then I took a job in between and went to work selling internet systems and otherwise, and ended up growing into telecommunication systems for oil fields and the sort. Made good money, was in a beautiful place, but I was miserable with the job. And so I wanted to go back to school and get that done. And at the time I was looking around at what schools are going to, equip me best. And I guess I just fired some shots out there without any thought of actively being included in any of those programs. And I was blessed to be included in the one at Babson, which for the last, 25, 30 years running has been the best school for someone who, like me, wants to start their own business. So I got to roll into their entrepreneurship intensity track and learn from some of the masters of the entrepreneurial craft, if you will, and network with some amazing people. And it was one of those things that you just get on the boat and you go do your job and you come home, and had every intention of moving home, and then life had a different path for us. So we ended up kind of establishing some roots up here in the Northeast, and though Wyoming will always be home, right now I've made Massachusetts, another step along that journey.
Yeah, it's really neat because doing research for the article, I actually saw where I guess it's the folks that published the case studies for Harvard Business School had picked up your case study from Babson.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, it's taught at Harvard. It's taught at Babson. And any other school that subscribes to those HBS cases certainly do it. And then it's actually included in the Entrepreneurship 101 textbook that a lot of schools use, which is flattering. But to be fair, I mean, the story that is mine, I guess, is as painful it was for me to experience firsthand. You know, if I can save some others some of the heartache by sharing mine, you know, certainly would, you know, hopefully it makes the world a little better place.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, you know, to be a case study, there was probably some yellow snow involved somewhere, right?
There had to have been a little bit. Yeah, no, they picked me up because I was the ultimate don't give up story. It's a long one, but I'd be happy to share bits and pieces of it if you think we have the time. But suffice it to say, I swung and missed and just kept swinging. One of my marketing professors at Babson preached out of a book called The Drunkard's Walk. Whole idea being that you just got to stay vertical, you know, and if you stay vertical long enough, you end up making it home from the bar, and you don't get hit by a bus or a train along the way, and end up face down in a gutter or otherwise. But eventually you make it, and you know, I was blessed to be able to see that. Yeah, in tow, I'm still vertical and still making it on home. So you just got to keep trucking. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that applies to so many different things. And, you know, it's interesting too, because I think a lot of people, and I know you selected Babson for the entrepreneurial path, but, you know, most people that get an MBA don't generally go down that entrepreneurial path first and take a more traditional, you know, MBA career path. What made you know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? I know you spoke a little bit earlier about kind of being miserable selling telecom stuff, but what's behind that story?
Yeah. So when I was a junior in college, I mean, I had always been an outdoorsman. I grew up through the scouting program and was a hiker and backpacker and climber and obviously an avid fisherman. A lot of what I did fishing wise was up in the mountains in Wyoming, on my own and otherwise too. So, hike in there, set up a camp and fish. That was kind of my love, to put it mildly. But frankly put, when I was a senior, I had to write a thesis for the honors program at UW, and I talked them out of making me write some silly econ paper, and instead gave them a proposal to let me write a business plan instead for a new venture. And I was the first of my kind to do that, I guess. So they accepted it and gave me the opportunity to do it. And I went through an entrepreneurship competition at that time, was a finalist, went forward. But to be frank, I mean, it might as well have been written in crayon as for the substance that was in it. I had a lot to learn yet. And but it planted the seed of starting this business and doing it right. And so in 2005, I guess I took that first plunge toward this path. And so the in-between years, you know, just helped me learn more about what to do and frankly put, what not to do as an employer and as a leader and otherwise in business. And so I learned a lot about what I could potentially do to be right to my employees and be successful from a man who had established himself and done very well. And then was given the opportunity to go back to school and started the program with the full plan in mind that I was going to launch as soon as I graduated. And to be frank, I mean, I was presented with a couple opportunities that were very difficult to turn my back on. One was to be part of the IBM think tank, actually, and be one of those lab rats, for lack of a better term, you know, to try and figure out where the world was going technologically speaking and try and figure out ways to make it a better place. And that was a tough one to turn down, but I'm thankful for it. You know, it's been a hard road, but it's been an extremely meaningful one along the way too. And going through those hard struggles, you know, people see a backpack on the wall. They don't think there's a lot that goes into it. And I definitely can attest that there is.
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, whatever entrepreneurial path you go down, you know, how did you get the idea for Vedavoo?
It's a great question. Quite frankly, I used stuff, and there were a lot of wonderful pieces out there. You know, I used a little bit from everybody, and it was all good, but none of it quite hit the mark for what I was looking for. And so when I was kind of heading down that path, one of the big things I wanted to do was to bring manufacturing back to the United States and to try and figure out how to do it here and how to do it simpler and cleaner and get away from 5,000 pockets and, little specialized features that may or may not be necessary. This is we don't need a refrigerated glove box, so to speak. It's just fishing. So to make it more suitable for a broad range of people, you make it less specialized for anyone. And that was a kind of a thing I hung my hat on early and just tried to build simple, lightweight, bomb-proof stuff that was going to last and treat people right, make more of their time on the water.
Yeah, so it was really kind of an anti-fiddliness campaign, right?
I've never heard it put quite that way, but sure, that works.
So where did the name come from?
So outside of Laramie, Wyoming, on the interstate there between Laramie and Cheyenne, is a state park called Vedavoo. It's actually a Native American word, which loosely translates to Garden of the Earth. It's spelled differently, Vedaawoo, instead of how we did it phonetically for the brand. But to be frank, it was a special place to me and a place I had a lot of fun when I was in college and before, and hiking and climbing and playing around and fishing and doing the sort. So it kind of covered all the bases of that outdoor sport love that I had. And so it made the high list. And then ultimately, it was my 3-year-old son at the time. He decided to pick that particular one. I think it was because it was most fun to say. So he's the one who picked our name, actually.
Yeah, very neat. And, I have to ask you, Scott, did you have any previous sewing experience at all?
No, I did not, sir. Not a bit, not a lick. I actually started the brand working with an outside third party gentleman who was incredibly skilled, but very expensive. He did a lot of work for Camelback and Marmot and REI and others. And I basically presented ideas to him. And he was going to be my turnkey service to help me get everything produced and manufactured and the whole deal. And we were going down that path. And unfortunately, it almost completely bankrupted me that first year, bled me dry. And all the costs associated with, the design and the sourcing and going back and forth. And then he'd find a factory for me and fast forward a few months and a major company walks in and buys all the unused capacity. And I was out on my ear and start the process all over again. I mean, those first 2 years were the ultimate start, stop, very difficult, challenging years and very expensive years. And got down to my last $700 in the bank that way. It was about time to roll up the carpets and call it done. And I had this is a kind of a well-known story now, but I had a conversation with Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia right around that critical time. And he flat out told me, he's like, look, I'll tell you what I told Fletcher, his son. He's like, you can't build something with your own hands. You got no business being in business. It's like, if you want to put a zipper somewhere, you might think this is a great place for a zipper, but it might triple your cost or make things impossible to build. I mean, you got to understand the ins and outs of the process, or you can't do anything. And it was amazing words. So I got on Craigslist, bought a sewing machine, and drove to Rhode Island and picked it up. Bought $300 worth of fabric and buckles and sort, and paid my website up for a year. Figured I'd give it one more year, and had a $12 safety net to carry me through. And went to my garage and taught myself to sew. So,
very neat. How long did it take you to kind of, I guess we won't say perfect, but workmanlike?
It took a long time. that first year of product, bless those kind souls who took some of the first things I made and put them to use. I remember one of the guys from Howler bought one of the first slings I ever made. He says it's still there. I imagine it is, but it's not the most beautiful thing on the planet. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot and have continued to over the years. And I think that's one of the perks of having now been in business 12 years. We keep getting better and simpler and cleaner with what we do. But the good news for a lot of folks out there is I don't have to build it all anymore. I've got some good folks behind me that actually sew faster and better than I can. So, but I got decent at it. It probably took me 14 solid months of of aggressive work trying to figure out how things go together and how to design and how to pattern and how to, isolate, sections of the build so that you can maximize your time and improve the quality of what you're trying to do. And learned about tools that I didn't even know existed long after I needed them, that made things even easier, and just kept trucking forward.
Yeah, very neat. And, we've touched on this a little bit, and, folks that are familiar with your brand know that, being handmade here in the United States, and you use a lot of repurposed materials, that's really kind of at the core of what you do. Can you talk to us a little bit about, your design philosophy and process?
Absolutely. A lot of the design like that third party vendor I mentioned earlier, a lot of what they did, they'd start with kind of like a digital drawing on a wall, so to speak, and almost like a slide deck, and send that through with rough dimensions, and then expect the factory to do the design beyond that. And there's a lot of pieces that get lost in translation. There's details that maybe don't get thought through. And so from a very early standpoint, I kind of went old school, and just got out the plastic and Mylar and rough fabric. And I just start sewing, figuring out what fits and what doesn't and what works and how it feels when you're wearing it. Okay, that angle doesn't work. Let's tweak that. So it's a very iterative process going back and forth. May end up taking longer in the long run, to get it done right. But when it comes through, it shows, that we thought out all those little details. And, some of, like, when I do a demo for folks, they're like, holy cow, you've literally tried to think of everything and every little detail. And I, short and sweet, try to tell them, no, I overthink it. So you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of the cornerstone of what we've done, and it's continued to work. And not all products we've made have been winners, but we've had a lot of success with what we've built over the years, with very few duds, so to speak. I think because of that reason.
Yeah, it's interesting because, listening to you talk about it, like, I can see how, it's clear, as we're talking, that you have a very, very clear idea of the problems you're trying to solve with the gear. And I could see, how it'd be almost impossible, even if you took someone who was talented for making outdoor gear, to kind of get that level of concern and interest into the product.
Yeah, that's well said. Imagine trying to find a person who has a true passion for the sport like you do, that also has that skill set specific to producing bags and packs. There's very few people in the world who are on that level. And to be frank, I wasn't. I had the passion for it, but I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So it's, like I say, it's probably taken us longer than I would have liked it to. But it's established that foundation the way it needed to be, by me teaching myself how to do it and learning through the years and constantly improving so that we could continue to still be here after all these years, and the fact that we are, I think, stands testament to our work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously you've gotten faster at innovating and prototyping, but, in the early days, how long would it take you to kind of go from, concept to retail?
That's a great question. The first backpack I ever made took me a little over a week, start to finish. If I was trying to do that again today and it took me a little over a week, there's nobody on the planet who would pay what it's worth. And fortunately, we've been able to be a lot more design oriented, that focuses on the process of the construction now. And that's allowed us to get that time frame down to where it's good for our company. We're obviously not out making, 10 or 15 or 20 time multiples like some folks do, but we're making a fair living with what we do, and doing our best to do it and deliver a quality product every time. But right now our timeline is probably right around 2 to 3 months from the time that we launch or get a product, defined, going through the process, getting it dialed in, to when we could potentially first start delivering to customers. but I tend to try to put the brakes on that a little bit further, just so that we do some thorough testing and review and table it for a while, then come back to it, just so that we can apply new thoughts or, kind of keep it fresh. So we typically work on about a 12-month cycle as well, a lot like others do, to be able to develop new products and roll them out. And it's worked well for us.
Yeah, interesting too. And while you've been talking, I was kind of thinking, you were really you were doing slings before slings were really kind of mainstream in fly fishing too. Like everybody's got them now, but when I kind of think back, and as I was preparing for the interview, I would imagine if you went back, 10 plus years, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of fly fishing slings.
There were definitely slings out there, but they were nothing like they are now. And, by us or by other, I think that has evolved a lot. And I'm happy to see that some of the things that we kind of did first have kind of entered the market on a broader sense with some of our fellows in the industry, have been able to leverage some of what we've done and brought it tighter. And I think that's good for everybody, And when we make an innovation and it works and others are able to pick up and run with that, I mean, that's great for the end guys who are out there using and having a good time. But yeah, no, we definitely had started with slings. That was bread and butter. The tight line sling was my first real product. And I started it with three critical things that frankly just drove me nuts. I hated a bunch of stuff on my chest. So I wanted to keep my chest clean. I hated how bags would ride on my casting shoulder. If I'm casting all day, why put that extra weight and burden on the shoulder that you're doing your job with while you're out there? My shoulder would be so tired at the end of the day, carrying it. And last but not least, I wanted to have the quick access to my gear, and without necessarily needing that third strap that a lot of them had, that inevitably would just end up unclipped and dangling in the river below me. So I set out to do just that, and that's kind of how we came to the market and brought that out. And all of our slings have been built around those three key pieces. Where now yes, we built a sling, but it's kind of like a hybrid between a chest pack, day pack sling, because of how it lays the gear across your chest level and how it sits comfortably on your back when you're fishing, and how it stays out of your way but is easily accessible. So it's been a recipe for success, so to speak, for us.
Yeah. Interesting. And where do your design inspirations come from? And I guess I'm kind of asking you that in two places, one artistically and two functionally.
Artistically, I hate to call myself an artist. I'm not, but a lot of the visual comes from me, and just what I see the brand looking like and where it needs to come through. I just wanted nice, simple, clean lines. There's a lot of curves and otherwise, if you look at cars today, there's a lot of those curvy Ford Taurus looking, Toyota Corollas, out there. And then now we're starting to see some other lines and things that kind of change that mold. And so I went that direction. Yeah, we still got some natural curves where they need to be, but we're trying to build, things that store square objects like fly boxes. So why not try to build around that line and then keep those lines nice, smooth, straight, and clean? And that's where that came from an aesthetics. But as far as our active designs and ideas, 90% of them come from people, like you. Give me a call. Our reel case is a great example. Paul Puckett of Floodside's a good friend, and he gave me a call. He's like, "Man, I'm getting so sick of reel cases that put a kink in my line when I have it strung up on the boat. It's either bending the tip over when I go to rip or pull it up if it's already strung tight, or I got to leave some slack, but then it always puts a little kink in my line." He said, "Can you build me a reel case where the line just goes straight to the first stripping guide?" And we did. And that's, still a major accessory in our line, and no kink reel case, or, a number of others. I could go on for a couple of episodes here with you about all the different ideas and where they came from, but a lot of it comes from real feedback from real folks, and the rest of it comes from me being an angler and a fisherman and somebody who loves the outdoors and just wants to make the most of it. So what my own experience can't lend, other people give. Yeah,
very, very neat. And, obviously, you've perfected, your design and your build process, when people look at one of your packs or slings, how many man hours are involved in one of those today?
Well, today we could probably crank them out pretty quick. We've gotten our system dialed in really well. Like the B sling used to be a couple hour build. You sit down from the time that you start tracing out the patterns and cutting till the time that it's finished and you're trimming off the threads and touching it up for shipping. I mean, it was easy a couple hours. And it got to the point where I was building anywhere between 40 and 50 in a batch by myself. And when you start doing those that early, and I just kind of, you learn how to cut. I hate to say cut corners because that's not how it's done, but cut out stuff that's unnecessary. Drop the fat, so to speak. So it's a leaner, meaner machine, and it's easier to put together, and it's more durable in the long run as a result. And that's ultimately what we've done. So the current beast, I think we can turn out two of them in an hour and a half now is what Meredith's doing them at. And sometimes if she gets a bigger batch, she can do them even quicker than that. But when you build everything one at a time, so to speak, or, as orders come in, you just kind of small batch it and keep cruising.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, when you're saying that, it makes me think about being a successful production fly tire, right?
Exactly.
You're not cutting corners, but you've got all the extra fluff out of the system. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you look at a bulky fly with all the bells and whistles and all the extra stuff, you end up with a hair's as big as a chubby. So nobody wants to fish that, and it's never going to work. So that's a really good analogy maybe for what Vedavoo is all about. It's lean and mean and clean, and no big step downs and tapers and things that shouldn't be there, and it catches fish, right?
Yeah, very neat. And it's interesting too because it had been like we were talking earlier today, and I can remember really early on in the company's history, and you had a few really well done products, but now you've got a pretty expansive product line. You want to kind of give folks kind of the lay of the land?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so from top down, I mean, realistically, slings is still a big part of what we do. We've got a variety of slings, just kind of fitting different needs. So everything from the little bugger for kids who are kind of getting started, and otherwise matching. The tight lines is still a piece of our line, that original sling. That's actually the lightest sling pack on the planet right now. If you're looking for something lightweight and minimal, it's a great piece for that. All the way up to the Beast, which is still one of our hallmark pieces in our line. I mean, it's solid, and a few in between. I mean, we've got one that's designed for the strap for women that lays more comfortably and conforms naturally to their contours up front. And we've got a slightly smaller design for folks called the Ripple that fits smaller statures, and the seam is kind of that mid-range sling, but still built for the full-size adult. But realistically, they're all just different sizes of the same product, to effectively fit different folks and different folks' needs. We do the day packs, the spinner and the hex have been solid. The new day pack's been great. And a ton of small accessories. I mean, like you say, I could go into it for quite a while. I think the best way to just check it out is look at our website. I mean, hate to make it sound like a marketing pitch, but do so. I'm not even going to tell you the address right now, but
but I'll drop it in I'll drop it in the show notes to make it easy for everybody.
Okay. Well, I don't want it to seem, like a marketing piece here. I'm happy to just tell my story for folks, but yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of those, but now I'm having fun with different materials and different needs, right? So we got into, we did our legacy line now, which is all made out of this heavy duty. It's like, used to be, you could buy a Filson pack, and you knew you were getting something serious, that tin cloth was real. Tin cloth isn't the same as it used to be. Now we found the highest quality wax canvas on the planet. It's a 18-ounce wax filter twill. It's unbelievable. It's rugged. It's durable. It's not over heavy, and it's nice. And we're blending that with our the premium kind of technical fabric, so you get that luxury without this compromise and sacrifice, so to speak. Which has been cool. We did some dry mesh stuff, so some quick dry stuff. We've got the new PVC coated vinyl series, our kind of our flagship line there. And that's all built to be extra water protection without like that high end submersible price point. Like if you go out and you try and price a submersible sling and compare it to our high end, flagship sling built here in the States, I think you'll see a pretty distinct dichotomy right out of the gate. Not to mention the fact that you can pick whatever colors you want. Like if you want to go, like what's your favorite team? How about you? We'll make this you right now. You're a customer. What's your favorite sports team?
Oh gosh. Well, if it's NFL, people will hate me, but I'm an old school, legitimate Dallas Cowboys fan and a Duke basketball fan. So,
well, it's been nice talking to you. Hope you have a good one.
There you go.
I'm kidding. Okay. So if you want to go light gray and white, navy blue, we could do that. We could have some fun with it for you. Maybe we could find an old school Dallas Cowboys patch and throw it on there for you too. I mean, the key here is we build gear with soul, So if you want something to be you and to do your way, we're all about it. It makes it fun for us. So that's why we do the microburst now. We just you talk football. I mean, we had and that patch from 1985, the year that the Bears won the Super Bowl, a long, long time ago. I know Bears fans probably remember, but we picked up one of those, put it on one of our accessories, and it sold out real quick. It was a one of a kind, but gosh, it was fun to make, and it gets people excited, and a lot more of those to come.
Yeah, very, very neat. And, kind of going back to your creation story, entrepreneurs are never done. And you basically told us about you're down to your last $700 and you got a sewing machine and some materials and you had $12 left over. Do you remember the moment that you knew you were going to be able to make a go of it with Vedavoo?
Yeah, I do. So the first year we sold $12,000 worth of product. Well, the first serious year. And that came after I just drew a line in the sand and said, I can't find a manufacturer that I can count on. I'm just going to do it myself. And, we got through that first year and I went back to IFBD for a second time. The first one I went to, I literally was sitting up with pallets that were propped up against chairs that a friend of mine had typed out of the Sims booth. Sorry, Sims. If you were a chair or two short, that's why. I appreciate you loaning those to me so a little guy could survive it. But we got back to that second IFBD and I had folks from the industry coming around and talking to me and telling me that, you're doing great stuff. I'm loving what I'm seeing. I remember Bart from Patagonia, who's now with Sims, come over and talked to me quite a bit and had a really, really kind conversation with him. And, I know Brian Bennett from Moldy Chum talked about how we were one of the coolest things he saw at the show. And he came up, told me, he's like, everybody's talking about you, man. Like, you're doing it right. Just keep trucking. And so that was kind of where I felt like, all right, we're moving. And let's be fair. Like, a lot of that came because the industry is what it is. I mean, this is an industry where people help each other and they look out for each other to an extent. And not to say that there aren't some cutthroat competitors out there. They are. And if you look pretty lightly at the surface, you'll be able to pick them out. But those ones that are there for the right reasons are what makes this industry so special and why I'm so proud to be a part of it and why I'm proud to pay it forward when I can and continue to give back. And I look forward to many more opportunities to help out young guys and gals like myself that are wanting to start something and help them along that same path, the way that Yvonne Chenard did for me and so many others since have. So,
yeah, it's neat too. Cause, I think it's, maybe not in the handmade space, but I think, the tools to be really creative and create things have probably never been better than they are right now.
No, absolutely not. Not to mention just the access to information, even just in the last 10 to 15 years from when I was first starting to try and do this versus now. I mean, if I was doing it today, I'd be over the moon with the access to some of those things that I could have today that I didn't have then. So yeah, you're spot on there. The barrier to entry is much lower.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's not quite the same as what you were talking about on the design perspective, but like my boys, you can go and have custom made vans, right? And they're not terribly expensive. And I mean, literally, whatever logo you want, you can give them the art, and like in 3 weeks they show up at your house. It's pretty slick.
Yeah, and that's the breakdown of that line for transport and shipping and otherwise from things being made overseas and getting them here quick. And that's one of the things that I'm going to have to face challenges with as things go on, no doubt. Fortunately, we're doing that today, and we've been doing that kind of one-off manufacturing method for years. For those who knew to ask, they could ask and they could get what they wanted. But outside of that, it's going to be more and more along those lines where people can get those customized deals. I mean, I'm just waiting for somebody to say, come in, let me laser scan your body so we can custom build some waders for you, because I'll be first in line for that. I'm a tall drink of water with real long legs, and not a lot of waders fit me real well. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
And there are a lot of SKUs out there too. So,
oh man, let me tell you.
But talking about challenges, and we've touched on this a couple times in earlier conversations. Obviously, COVID has had a huge impact on everybody. It's had a huge impact on the industry. I know that early on it really hit your demand, and you had to furlough some of your employees. And where the Delta thing's moving around now, so I have to knock on wood to say that hopefully we're well down the tunnel and seeing the light on the other side. But what are you seeing in terms of, business outlook now? I know some people in the industry are having extreme supply chain problems. What are you seeing with Vedavoo?
Well, that's one of the perks of doing things the way we do. We don't have to wait for a boat to get unstuck out of the Suez Canal for us to be able to build for folks. So we've been able to stay kind of ahead of that curve as far as supply goes. We also didn't have to pre-order a bunch of stuff only to have to discount it, when the demand wasn't there. So we dodged some bullets in that regard. But the challenges that we have faced certainly have been related to increased costs and lead time on inputs. But moreover, just the overall vibe in the world and everything else like that has been tough to overcome. I hate to paint a negative picture, because in a lot of ways it's been a very positive thing for the company and for me personally. It made me grow up a lot, made me mature a lot in this process. I mean, I was trying to raise, who is now a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old with a 16-year-old kicker last year when they were 1 and 3 and 15 without daycare and with homeschooling. And it's the battles that so many folks have been having to face and trying to still make a living along that line. It was not easy, to put it mildly. I mean, my wife and I were trying to take effectively 40 to 50 hour jobs and crank them into 15 to 20 hours a week, because we were home with the kids. The rest of the time just splitting time and being ocean or vessels passing in the night. But the hardest part for me, I think, was that 8 to 12 week period. I don't remember the exact, it was somewhere in there, almost 3 months, where the state shut us down. I mean, we were considered a non-essential, operation, and therefore unable to proceed work. And I even offered to the state the opportunity to have me build masks, for first responders and the sort, and they never called me back, just to try and keep the doors open. But in some ways, it was cool just to go back to the basement for a little while and remember where I came from, and remember those harder times and those leaner times, and just one more notch in the you didn't die belt, and just keep trucking on. I think that Delta is going to be challenging, and I think that folks should be mindful of it and safe of it, and do what they can do to protect themselves and their loved ones and people around them. And hopefully we get out of this less scathed than the first time around. But I worry. IFTD is around the corner, and I would love to be there, but I've already made the decision to not be there this time around, just for the sake of my loved ones and otherwise. And we're going to do an online trade show, I think, and let people come to my booth, wink, wink, so to speak, through my website and check out what we do. Maybe give that access to the everyday consumer as well, so they can just shop around and learn what we do that way. It's just going to force us to be more creative and more focused on the things that really matter. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, shifting gears a little bit, other than COVID, or let's say it a different way, if COVID had never happened, what would be the greatest challenge or surprise over your Vedavoo experience?
Greatest challenge or surprise over the last 12 years. My goodness.
I'll give you 2 or 3 if you need them.
2 or 3 hours to figure that out. No, I'll tell you, I think the overcoming the basement days, growing out of the basement, so to speak. We call it the basement days because I work from home and the folks who worked for me worked from their homes. And we just I cut all the fabric in my basement and delivered kits to folks and let them do their thing. I had one other gal that kind of cut her own on demand, and we just kind of made it work. Now we have the workshop, which is a really cool space. I mean, it's a 150-year-old mill building where Steinway pianos used to be produced. And we're still cranking out creative out of it, which is super cool. But moving into that space was awesome. The downside is I think we were right on that ledge of really, really exciting times ahead when COVID hit. So I wish it hadn't, because I would have loved to see what could have come out of that timeline, because we had that momentum, we had that gusto, we were ready to really crank and deliver some cool stuff, and then it kind of slowed us down a little bit. But in that same regard, it's definitely opened the door to some other opportunities and some other exciting stuff that we've done. And if anything, maybe forced me to put the brakes on, pump the brakes a little bit, and remember who we are and what we're about and where we came from, and to not lose sight of what we are, you know. But I would have to say that the most exciting time for me was when I took my first paycheck after years and years and years of just struggling through. And I think it was like 6 or 7 years I went without a paycheck, just trying to make it work, plowing every penny I had back into the business, and got that first paycheck. That was a cool moment. And the few that I've gotten since. No, it's just all been such a cool road all the way along. And, you know, I could probably fill up 3 or 4 episodes with everything that's come from it, but, there's great joy in building things that, you know, is going to make people's recreation even better. And getting those messages has been great.
Yeah. And I imagine when you kind of get back to the workshop full time, you know, that I always think, you know, it's kind of challenges and failures that help you grow. Because if you have an unlimited string of successes, you don't really learn a whole lot, right?
I definitely learn more from the failures than I have from the successes, for sure.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I would imagine you'll be primed to be, you know, leaner and more creative.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Definitely leaner. We've made the most of short time, and that's been good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Get me back to 5 days a week and look out, world. Here we come.
Yeah. There you go. And, you know, what advice do you have for folks that are trying to break into the industry?
Don't be afraid to talk to folks. Ask questions. Reach out to people. I mean, Yvonne Chenard was there for me, you know, and gave me advice. And, you know, Stephen Campbell from Farbank, you know, the guy who was CEO of Farbank at the time was very, very helpful. And, Mr. Campbell was great. And Bart, and I mean, like I say, everybody, they were just very inclusive and very supportive and willing to give you a straightforward answer. And those that weren't were the ones that you had to watch out for. You know, and it's pretty clear, right up front. But yeah, the only way you ever make it is to ask questions and just get your feet wet. You know, you don't catch any fish if you don't get in the river.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, what you're also seeing is, you know, when you're sincere and earnest and want to work hard, it gets reflected back at you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
And so, you know, also kind of stepping back and talking about the brand a little bit, you know, I also, you know, I knew kind of from our paths have crossed in the past that, you know, you were active with Pig Farm and Trout Unlimited and things like that. But I thought one thing that was really cool on your website is how you support other makers. And I wanted to just kind of give you an opportunity to kind of talk about all these things that you do to kind of give back and why they're important to you and why they're important to the brand.
I don't really know how to answer it other than to say it just feels like it's a responsibility to a certain level. Like if I was only out for myself in this, I'd be doing it for the wrong reason. I want this, and it sounds almost cliche to say, but I want to leave the world better than I found it. You know, the same way that I wanted to leave a campsite better than I found it. You know, and I know I only make backpacks, but at what level can I make a difference through that? I mean, over the years, I know we've reached out and showcased a number of artists that were kind of up and coming, and look at them now. I mean, I'm so happy to see some of the growth some of them have done. It's been cool to be able to work with small brands. They were just getting started. Whiskey Leatherworks was one of them. They're still selling their floating holders today, and look at them now. I mean, they've blown up. They've done a great job, and Cliff Outdoors has always been a love of mine. Matt Castle there is such a genuine man and a good guy and a good friend, and they're from my hometown in Casper. So yeah, we don't move a lot of volume necessarily, but that's not what it's about. Streamwalker Nets, another great example. That guy hand builds everything himself. He's in his workshop. It's reminiscent of those early days for me. But it's good to be able to do those. I've got a promo coming soon where I'm actually going to partner up and do a collab with a little outfit called Banana Good Luck. So keep an eye out for that one. And it's just a fella kind of putting out some fun stuff and some stickers and some hats, but hopefully it'll remind some folks that it's fishing. We're out having a good time. Don't take life too seriously. Just make the most of it and have a good time as you go. And in that context, it's been a pleasure. As far as the nonprofit stuff, that's always been part of what I wanted to do from day one. We want to give back to folks and give back to the industry. I may not be able to write those fat checks, but in ways that I can't give, I make up for in others. And that's been intentional, so whether it be Healing Waters or Trout Unlimited or, like you say, Pig Farm, and with the good work Jay and the guys around him have been doing there, they're doing it right. There was just a Get Trashed event on the Delaware River that we sponsored. And they pulled out, I want to say, like 56 tires out of the Delaware River. The second time they've done it. I mean, it's just incredible. Like, that's an unbelievable fishery. And it's going to be even more so because of the work that's getting done out there. So how can you not want to support that, But definitely excited right now to stand behind the stuff with TU and the effort to try and get that lower Snake River Dam system removed. Try and restore some watersheds there and make those good for the future and for kids like mine and their kids beyond them. So just got to do it.
Yeah, very neat. And, any other kind of news or updates? You talked about this promotion that will be coming out soon. Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
I'd be remiss if I didn't end on a high note here, in the context that's non-marketing. So if you've made it this far, thank you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks for letting me share this story a little bit and let you know what it's like in the life of a pack builder. And this is the kind of stuff that adds fuel to the tank and keeps us cranking, late nights and late days and everything else that goes with it. So I appreciate you and I appreciate all that you guys have done to help keep us moving. And if you're new to our brand or otherwise, I look forward to the opportunity to building something for you that makes it awesome. So thanks for that. And sir, thank you for having us to be able to share that message with your listeners. So it's super cool.
Yeah, it's been a blast having you on. And before I let you hop tonight,
well, I don't know any good jokes, but I try.
No, it's all good. Before I let you hop tonight, I know you're gonna not make it to IFTD. Do you anticipate, if COVID things look better, maybe be doing some of the consumer shows, maybe kind of later in the winter, early in the spring? Or are you just going to kind of take it off and really kind of focus on the business?
I'm keeping an eye on things. I definitely have enjoyed the opportunity to just put both eyes, on what I'm working on right now and to continue to innovate. There's a lot of big things on the horizon. I'll put it that way. I don't want to give away too much too soon. We have probably a dozen products that I could launch right now that I'm holding back, trying to make sure they're perfect before we bring them. And so we're going to keep having fun in the near term, but there's some big stuff coming. And I've got my hands in a couple other ventures that are soon to launch too. So putting some energy into those has been fun, and it's just crazy. We're making the most of it though.
Yeah, very neat. And you want to let folks know where they can find you, find your products, and follow your adventures and Vedavoo's adventures on the internet?
I appreciate that, sir. Yeah, we have a website, obviously. You kind of have to, these figures, and that's Vedavoo.com. Not spelled like the park. We didn't want to claim ownership of it, so to speak, but phonetically. So Vedavoo. And then obviously when I'm not sewing or responding to emails or doing things like this, I occasionally try to get on Instagram and do a little work there too. So if it's not always consistent, bear with me, but I do share most through Instagram. I think that trickles down to some of the other little circles too, but those are our two majors.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, listen, Scott, I really appreciate you taking some time out tonight to sit in your car and talk to me and not listen to fire engines and let your kids go.
Yeah, what a night, right? For your listeners who didn't know, we had a 7-alarm fire down the street tonight, so I had to warn him that there might be a fire engine or two flying by here. So kind of dodged that bullet, and fortunately after bedtime, they kept the sirens off, so I don't have to worry about going into awake kids. So thank God.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Scott, thank you again so much.
My pleasure, sir. Be well.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. Tight lines, everybody.